What's going on, collective listeners? I appreciate you guys hopping on for another episode of the Samson Strength Coach Collective. Today, we've got Jared Heumann, who's a head strength and conditioning coach at the University of Texas Permian Basin, recently promoted to head strength and conditioning coach, actually. So we talk a lot about that. His story is excellent. He's got a real great work ethic, and obviously been through a ton of different experiences, obviously, prior to leading and getting into this head strength and conditioning position. Fair warning, we did come across some technical difficulties. Had this really awesome situation where the whole Wi-Fi in my county decided that it wanted to go out. So that we dealt with that. So we kind of had to do this over the course of 2 days. So apologize, things get a little funky in there, but appreciate you guys hanging in there, being patient. But yeah, enjoy this one. Awesome stuff. What's going on, collective listeners? Welcome back for another episode. As always, we appreciate you guys tuning in. Welcome. We have a special guest today, and we will explain why in a little bit, why it's a little bit more of a special podcast. I'm glad we're recording it right after the promotion that Jared Heumann, who is now the head strength and conditioning coach at the University of Texas Permian Basin. So that is UTPB for the acronym fellows out there. So yeah, welcome, Jared. Appreciate you hopping on, man. Obviously a little bit of craziness, a little hectic in your life lately, obviously just with the promotion. But if you want, why don't you kind of introduce yourself, tell everybody a little bit about yourself, where this whole thing started and what it's led into now, and talk a little bit about what you're doing now at UTPB.
Yeah, so I mean, I appreciate you having me on. So how it all started, I mean, I feel like it's very typical strength coach, like played college sports, I played college football. Got hurt actually my freshman year. I was offensive lineman. I kind of got tired of being a fat offensive lineman. So right when I got injured, I said, I'm tired of eating Ben and Jerry's every night to maintain my weight. And then right when I got injured, I was just checked out. I wasn't happy with what school I got recruited to. I mean, I wasn't the greatest kid in high school, so that kind of ruined my recruiting process. But right when I got injured, I didn't know what I wanted to do. Initially, I went to school to become a history teacher, and it was kind of just all up in the air. So I kind of took a gap year to kind of just figure out who I am and figure out what I wanted to do. And a year later, I figured out, I want to do exercise science. I don't know what route, either PT, athletic training, strength conditioning, or even just become a personal trainer. So I started hitting up local gyms, personal trainers, just to talk to them, just shadow just certain things. And then I was living in New York, hit up pretty much almost every big time school in New York. I got an email from Don Day when he was at Buffalo. He was like, yeah, feel free to drive up, just watch a lift. And I said, sweet. I said, when? And he's like, hey. I'm like, all right, I'll see you there.
That's definitely a Don Day thing to do. Yep. Yeah.
So I drove up there, slept in my car that night. They had lift super early in the morning. And I just shadowed the lift. And I think it was literally right when the kids came in, I said, oh, this is what I want to do. And just seeing how he orchestrated his staff and just how lifts were ran, I'm like, it reassured me more. And then after that, just talking to the staff, just asking questions about how to become a strength coach, because I had no idea. So they were like, hey, experience is key. So start coaching as much as you possibly can. So kind of owe Don Day a little bit more than he probably thinks I do. I talked to him last night. I was like, I owe you pretty much my career. You don't think that anything about it, but me going to Buffalo started my career.
Yeah.
And I just ran with it. So after that, I was living in Binghamton, New York. I was going to online undergrad. Binghamton University, a small Division I school. I emailed their head strength coach. I said, hey, do you guys have an internship program? He's like, yeah, come in, talk. So it just started off as a basic intern, just me shadowing, kind of coaching. Led to me being there for 2.5 years.
Wow.
As an intern. So initially it started as the intern. They kind of wanted to see what I was about and if I was interested, and I just kept showing up every day.
Yeah.
And then by that 2.5 years, it kind of led to me being as a quote unquote glorified unpaid assistant. I was taking over some teams, running lifts. They completely trusted me with everything. They would ask me for my input. I'm like, I feel like I'm an assistant right now.
Yeah.
I was just an intern. Then COVID hit. I knew undergrad was already done. Right when COVID hit, I said, all right, my time at Binghamton's already done. I spent 2.5 years. Let's try to continue to branch out and learn a little bit more. And then at Shippensburg University, Coach Kerstetter. He had an unpaid assistant spot. So it paid for housing and food. He connected it with a local prep school with their strength coach. So was an assistant at Shippensburg for 8 months during the COVID, like that COVID summer, fall. And I learned a lot under him. I mean, again, like he's one of my biggest mentors as well. I call him up whenever, especially when this process that we're going to talk about, that kind of just happened. I mean, I asked him points of views, like, hey, like just picked his brain. And I was there for 8 months. That was probably the hardest time, me being a strength coach, because while I was at Binghamton, me doing undergrad, working part-time, plus interning a whole bunch, like that's a lot. But when I was at Shippensburg, I couldn't work. It's just, I'm there. So I couldn't make any money. So I was living off my savings because, I mean, I went into pretty much zero debt. Like I had money saved up and savings just went straight to zero.
Yeah.
But that was a sacrifice that I knew. Days were long, wake up at like 3 a.m., get there at 4, start my lift at 4 o'clock. First group's at 6. And then I would go from 6 to 6 and then I would drive back to the prep school. I had to clean the basketball facilities. So so for the next, I would only go there probably like 3 times a week to clean. So like Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and also Sundays too. I was just cleaning the facilities, cleaning toilets, sweeping floors. So that was really hard for me because it made me question if I wanted to continue to do this.
Rightfully so.
So, but over that time, that 8 months, I grew more. The amount of knowledge that I grew, just seeing, orchestrating, help running an internship program. It was life-changing. I mean, it was difficult. I almost thought about just saying, screw it, I'm getting out of strength and conditioning. But it reassured me more like this is what I truly love. Like seeing the athletes just progress in the weight room, but also not even in the weight room, just as becoming a young adult, was great to see. And then after that, I knew I needed a master's. Applied for, I don't even know how many graduate assistants.
Anyone that was available.
Literally everywhere. And then I got hit up about UTPB, went through the interview process, got hired as a GA. That was during the COVID spring. So we had our COVID spring football season. We had an assistant at the time. He left in the beginning of that summer after. And I literally think it was that next day, right when he left, I went into my boss's office and said, I want the full-time assistant spot. I said, I think I deserve it. You see me working, trying to continue to grow and learn. And he sat on it for a day, called me in the office. I literally believe it was the next day. And he said, no, it's your job. So I got promoted to full-time assistant. And then I put my master's in a back burner from there. Just, I'm like, let's just focus on this year. And then I was an assistant for 1.5 years, and then continue to grow, continue to learn, learning under my old boss, Coach Jurgel. And he took a job to Duke, and now I'm the head strength coach here. So went real fast. But I mean, I'm blessed with my journey. Feel like not many people can say that they went from a GA to an assistant to a head at the same university. But I mean, I like to think that shows my growth as an individual and a coach. So now we're here, and now we're rocking and rolling, getting ready for football season, and trying to look for an assistant coach to hire.
Dude, that's awesome. Obviously, first, congratulations. And I think it goes without saying, but it is wild, man. You went from scrubbing toilets, you know what I mean, to now you're a head strength coach. And honestly, like most guys who are, listening, and it may not have been the same type of trajectory. I don't know if everybody's gone through that similar trajectory, but at one point, I remember like I was not when I was chasing the strength coach dream, but I was a custodian for, like, when you have those like summer jobs, what I mean? Just, and that's kind of like what it, what I think the value in some of those summer jobs are. Like I started work when I was like 14 years old, and whether it's like landscaping, construction, any sort of like manual labor. I was, like I said, I was a janitor at a middle school or whatever for a summer. It's the same thing you probably experience when, scrubbing toilets and cleaning bathrooms and stuff like that. And it's nasty work, you know what I mean? And it kind of gives you a little bit of a different perspective on things, and definitely an appreciation for the people who are actually doing that work as a career. And that's probably why, along with all the skills that you picked up, another reason you're probably the guy who knows the names of the facilities workers who are obviously going through the building, right? Someone who's actually going to take the time to get to know people. And that's, as much as, your X's and O's and your technical ability is probably why they promoted you to that position. I think a lot of that comes from when these promotions happen, just the overall personable personality, I guess, for lack of better terms, that people are putting out, and so good on you, man. That's awesome. And to your point, it's awesome when you can get somebody who started off as like, an unpaid intern or a GA and then worked their way up through the chain. And I think that's how it should be at most schools. It obviously isn't for whatever, a bunch of different reasons, right? It's always different at every school. And as we know, in the training conditioning industry, there's a ton of turnover and everybody's moving from spot to spot. But yeah, man, it's sick. Like, that's awesome that you're able to do that at that spot. And I think there's a little bit more buy-in, you know what I mean? There's a little more pride too, once you get to that spot and you are a head guy. Just to go back to, what you mentioned before, you talked about how, like, when you were in high school, maybe early college years, you weren't, you classified it as you weren't necessarily the greatest kid. What I typically probably amount that to is you haven't really at that point in time found what you were typically truly interested in, right? And I think unfortunately that is the case with a lot of these situations where you get somebody's like, oh, he's not a good kid in school, and it's like, well, it doesn't mean he's not a good kid, or it doesn't mean he's not intelligent or whatever it is. It's just just one way of producing formalized education, and this just may not be the way that he drives or the way that he picks up on things. So if you want to, I'd love to hear you kind of like elaborate on that a little bit, and kind of talk about what did you mean by that, and what do you think kind of attributed to some of those things?
Yeah, I think it was the thing about, like, I didn't grow up the best, just dealing with, like, divorced parents, like having like dad in and out of the picture. So like as a kid, especially as a young adult, in the eyes that some people say, like, that's what high schoolers are, growing into a young adult. It's a stressful time. I mean, I was kind of lost and I just didn't know who I was. Like, I'm very talkative as a person of now. I was a mute when I was in high school. Like, I had friends and everything, but I was just super quiet. Like, and just my actions, I would miss school. I wouldn't pay attention. I wouldn't even try. I wouldn't turn in homework. And it led to just teachers would look at me and say, like, you're going to be either locked up or you're going to be just dead. Like, and I remember that to this day. And like, I think that's one thing that still continues drives me more. As a good old, I think it's probably the New York inside of me, is that, it's a good old, like, screw you in a little bit. Like, look where I'm at right now.
Yeah,
like,
for
I was
sure.
locked up or dead at one point, and I'm thriving right now in my eyes.
Yeah, no doubt, absolutely.
So,
And yeah, and not sorry, keep going.
no, so yeah, so I think it was just me just not knowing how to cope, not knowing how to talk, and then just continuing to grow into a young adult that I still am. It's just just learning through scenarios and stuff, and just I regret some things, but I mean also I don't at the same time, because like I grew up as an individual, and I mean I want to change the world who I am right now.
Yeah, no doubt. And I think, yeah, like I said before, like, I think it's unfortunate that a lot of kids will get categorized as like, oh, this guy's going to be a nobody. And it's like, well, and there's got to be different ways you can figure out how to connect with certain people and how to reach certain kids. And and I would say too, like, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I wouldn't say that because of the fact that you just became a head strength and conditioning coach, that is where we would sort of like hang our hat to say, like, oh, look at Jared, look at what he's done. You thought he was going to be dead or in jail or whatever, but now he's a head strength coach. Like, I would say that you became, successful, and you were thriving even when you were working 2.5 years as an unpaid intern. You know what I mean? Like, I think it was more so like the approach that you brought to every single thing that you were doing is what then you could say to those people who doubted you. They're like, oh no, look what I'm doing. Right. Like, like, you know what I mean? I'm talking about regardless of money, right? Like, let's be honest, like, everybody kind of classifies things based on like financial structure and things like that. And that's fine. But and it's not to say that making more money isn't great, and obviously having certain titles and everything is great, but like, I think your approach changed pretty drastically once you figured out what your passions were, and the fact that you kept showing up, like you said, like, I'm just going to keep showing up, and I'm just going to keep proving people wrong, and I'm going to wake up at 3:00 in the morning, and I'm going to coach from 6 to 6 after I lift, and I'm going to go, scrub toilets and clean. It's like, I would say at that point in time, regardless of what it felt like, you're probably thriving, right? I mean, I felt like it at the time.
Yeah,
right?
no, most definitely. Like, I get what you're saying. What I meant more by thriving is like I meant to my goal. Like, my goal when I started this field was I want to be a head strength coach. But then also I meant like thriving is like teachers said I wasn't even going to go to like, oh, you're going to play college football. You're not going to graduate. I got a degree back here. When they found out because I still got friends that are still in that same hometown with some teachers, and they're like, oh, well, is he gonna get his master's? I will show you that.
Yeah.
So I think that's where I'm at, like thriving. Like I'm gonna prove you wrong because I know my capabilities where I'm at right now and me continuing to grow, and that's where I'm at in the thriving stage. Like,
yeah,
there's nowhere near that I'm satisfied where I'm at, so it's continuing to grow, but just the thriving, the part that I'm proving everyone wrong that told me that.
Yeah, for sure. And how old are you now?
26.
You're only 26. Wow.
Yes.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's a super young age to obviously be taking a head role. But no, that's awesome. And I think, yeah, you're going to continue to kind of go the route of like, proving people wrong. Would you say that there is part of you, because obviously, you talked about a lot of the people who've, invested in you, right? And like kind of like helped you, right? What would you say kind of drives you more? Would you say it's those people who doubted you, or is there a part of you that's like, honestly, there's a lot more weight being, held in the corner of the people who invested in me? I want to prove those people right, that they didn't make a mistake in taking the time to really try to develop me to get to where I'm at now.
I think it's a little bit of both. I think especially in the role that I'm in right now, my old boss, he set me up for success.
Yeah.
And the culture because when he got hired here, there wasn't the best culture when it came into strength conditioning, especially with starting with a new football team. So he was in a really bad situation, a really terrible weight room. He built this weight room from ground up, picked everything out. So he built me a foundation. And in my eyes, it's like, like I'm going to continue to build what you have. Like what I told the football team when it got announced is like, yeah, like him and I have the same philosophy. If not, he wouldn't have promoted me. So just understand I'm going to build up on this, and I'm going to continue to stack up and continue to build what he left. So don't think that he's gone and stuff. Like I'm a product of him.
Sure.
So understand that. And now we're just building to a next level.
Yeah.
But then also, I think it's also just that stubborn New Yorker in me that it's like, I'm going to prove you wrong as well to the people that got
Yeah, I think a lot of people who are listening to this from the East Coast probably resonate with that, right? There's definitely a little bit of that. There's a reason they call it the Beast Coast, right? Like there's a little bit of that, especially in the Northeast, we're a little faster, you know what I mean? Some of the West Coast, a little grittier up here. We got to deal with winter, so everybody's a little pissed off naturally most of the time, right? It's so damn cold, and there's the wind's always hitting you in the face, and especially you guys. So where I missed it. What was the hometown that you grew up in?
I truly say my hometown's Binghamton, New York.
Okay.
So far south of Syracuse.
Oh, okay. All right. So that's still upstate New York, right?
Yeah, still upstate.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, I think upstate New York was still getting snow in like May this year. So yeah, I totally understand the that go-getter attitude for sure. So yeah, and it's funny too, is like, for all the people listening, obviously we, like you hit me up, or I think you commented or something like that on one of the posts that I had. I think it might even have been the Don Day podcast that I put together. And I was just like, like, why don't we get this guy on to chat? You know what I mean? And so that goes for like all the listeners. I'm just like, if anybody who listens to this podcast wants to be on this podcast, I mean, that's the idea, is like, I don't care who we talk to. Like, we're trying to get people on here and have good conversations. So hit me up. And I appreciate the way you went out there and did that. And that's how I know. I'm like, if this dude's confident enough to be on a podcast, like, I know the first time I was asked to be on this podcast, I was super nervous. I was like rehearsing a bunch of stuff. I'm like, I got to be good. Like, I got to be great. You know what I mean? And I'm like, dude, what is that? You know what I mean? So I think, I appreciate you doing that and showing the boldness, but kind of moving on from there. So now, you have this thing in front of you, right? And I know it's pretty quick that this whole thing has happened. But have you had any time to reflect on how you might plan to approach some of these things? And like, what are some of the things that you specifically thought about when it comes to how you're going to approach now being a head guy? I'm sure there's some basic stuff, right? Like, all right, obviously we got to make sure that everybody continues to train, that all the teams are equipped with what they need to be equipped with in terms of their, training experience and all that kind of stuff, programming, whatever. But, just to make sure that things are flowing. But what are some of the things that you really have thought about? Maybe you've thought about for quite some time prior to becoming a head guy, or at least in the last couple of days that you plan to kind of implement moving forward?
I mean, honestly, it's kind of just me staying true to myself still. Like, of course, I'm going to implement things with the football team that they're not used to. Again, like, I'm a product of my coach, but I'm going to add my own little sprinkles to it, as what I've been telling the football players.
Yeah.
But also, it's like, it's a new challenge now. Like I got to deal with all the administration stuff. Like my boss will always come in and say, I got to deal with this, like, purchase orders and everything like that should have been in. But it's like, again, like I'm hungry right now. Like, yeah, I met my goal, but I'm not satisfied. Right. And it's just kind of still bringing everything up. Like there's certain things in this weight room that I still want to get. Like I have everything in this weight room I look at. Like it's a 9,000 square foot weight room with 15 platforms and a whole bunch of other stuff. Nice. So it's like, do I need to buy some stuff? But no, like, am I going to approach administration and say, hey, like this can help better the program more? Yeah, most definitely. So that's like one thing that, I always thought about, but my boss and I had that conversation as well. Well, former boss now. But like we always talked about that. Like, what can we build in here and what can we grow and how should we grow this university in my eyes as a powerhouse strength and conditioning? And my goal is just, we have 2 GAs and my thing is like, hey, let's continue in education. Like my goal is to try to have staff talks like at least once a week. And then also on top of that, try to reach out to other staffs and hey, let's go staff to staff Zoom talks, just so they can reach out and understand different perspectives. Because I think it's great, especially as a young coach, and I still am, just, tools in the toolbox, just continue to try to build. So like my job, like, yeah, I'm gonna continue to grow as a coach, but, try to build everyone else who's under me to make them into the best possible coach that they can be as well.
All right, so we're back. Obviously, as you can see, I know this is a little bit different. We had some technical difficulties yesterday. The whole county Wi-Fi decided to go out, so we're actually day 2 of this podcast. So we're going to pick up where we left off. Obviously, they're talking about Jared here and what he plans to do with the program at UTPB now that he is the head guy, and kind of just diving into what it really means to take a look at something and take a look at what was done successfully, and then also kind of put your own spin on it, obviously, and have that connection with the guy. So Jared, welcome back again, man. Appreciate it. Appreciate you being super flexible with this whole thing, and super patient, obviously. But yeah, man, if you want to kind of just give us a little bit of a taste of what's to come for UTPB as you now take on this head role at a very young age of 26.
Yeah, so I mean, like what I kind of just telling every single athlete, especially like what my former boss, like the teams that he worked with, like football was his bread and butter. I keep telling the guys that things are going to be very, very similar because he's a mentor of mine. So again, like I'm a product of him. But again, I'm going to put a little twist to it. Some things that they haven't seen before, especially next week. Like that's when we start in-season lifts. So there's going to be certain lifts that they haven't done. But we're just going to rock and roll with it. But again, like lifting's lifting at one point. I mean, I still have the same philosophy as what my boss was. So like strength is king in our eyes. Weak things break, so let's just roll with that and just keep them fresh for games. But overall, it's just like as a staff, just growing the staff and growing everything. My boss, former boss, he did a great job by building it because it was just him and an assistant at the time. He was able to get 2 GAs. So the plan at some point in the fall that we're going to have a staff of 4. So he set me up for success. And I just got to roll with it, continue the education with our GAs, making sure that they're ready, especially when they're done with their master's program, make sure that they're ready to be an assistant. And make sure that they're very serviceable. So,
that's pretty sweet. Yeah. So is that normal to have a staff of 4 at the level you're working at?
Honestly, not really. So prior to that, I was at Shippensburg D2 level. It was literally just the head and then me as an unpaid volunteer. And so like where he's at right now, he's kind of just relying on lots of interns.
Sure.
So, I mean, I'm blessed right now. In our conference, we kind of have, in the Lone Star Conference, we have like pretty much most schools are pretty well staffed.
Sure.
So I'm blessed with that. But again, it's just continuing to try to build, make sure that the best possible coaches are here and make sure that the athletes are getting treated right, make sure that they're, ready to play.
Yeah, for sure. And and hopefully, did they get your email fixed yet? That everything gets squared away on that. Yeah, we were joking the other day for all listeners. It's kind of like, yeah, you could become a head guy and then all of a sudden his email doesn't work. And I remember it's kind of brought me back to my days at UConn where I was like, we'd show up and it would just be like, all right, my key fob worked for another day. Like, money in the bank. I got one more day at least, you know what I mean,
Yep.
on the contract. So that's helpful. No, that's awesome stuff. So how is this going to work now? Obviously for you, getting into it, right? You're going to start making some of the changes. What have been some of the response? Like, I'm sure the guys kind of went nuts and they're, a huge fan of you, right? How about some of the coaches and some of the support staff? Like, have you really been trying to like meet with some of them and get down to the nitty gritty of some of the things that you plan to implement? Did they already kind of know you a little bit, right? I'm sure they probably have a good feel for you. How's that gone so far?
So one thing, so when my boss, when he took that job for to go to Duke, it was kind of in limbo, like who's going to become the next head, what's going to be the move, and I didn't want to be the interim because, like, I want to become the head. I wanted something to become official.
Yeah.
So I did my services. I met with the athletic director. I had to pitch my case. I felt like I was in Shark Tank.
Yeah.
And then I met with the head football coach. He signed off on me, so that was huge. I mean, I'm blessed with Coach Kerrigan for doing that. And then I met with the head basketball coach too.
Oh wow.
I kind of just told him, I said, hey, this is my plans. This is to make sure that each sports team's making sure that they're getting the best opportunities in the way room. Make sure again, like they're serviceable for their sports and make sure that they're bigger, faster, stronger. I mean, that's the ideal when it comes in here, but it's more than that. I think it's lifting is the lesson of life, and it's all about problem solving as well. So it's kind of just I was meeting around with coaches, athletic director. So it was on, I think it was last Wednesday that it was a busy day for me. I was meeting with everyone that I possibly could to kind of just sign off, say like, hey, like we don't need to go outside and look. Like we have our guy, we just got to find someone else to fill his position because it's the easiest transition, especially for the football team. That like the culture is fantastic right now, and now it's just all about just building it more and just making sure it leads to wins. So yeah, I mean it was a hectic day last Wednesday, but now I'm here, so clearly I did a good enough job on my pitches.
Yeah, hell yeah, man. That's a power move right there. That's a boss move. And that's a good, and it's not like you're doing that, blindly, right? Like it's not like, I think a lot of people are like, hey, like figure out, or just like, just go out there and do whatever and see what sticks kind of thing. It's like, no, you put in the work. Obviously we've already outlined like all of the, the specific journey that you've had. And obviously everything that you've gone through, I mean, gone from, unpaid cleaning toilets or whatever the case may be to like now being a head strength coach. It's like, well, you feel confident obviously in what you're prepared for and you decided you wanted to go and present your case. Right. So I think it's completely justified. And I guess like my question would be, would you say, for somebody who is out there right now, I'm sure there's a bunch of coaches who are probably going through a similar situation where that head job may have, the head guy may have taken off and gone somewhere else. Right. Because we know the turnover, especially around this time of year. And, it's like, do you feel like, all right, well, here's how you would go about doing that. Like if you really felt confident that this is I am the guy for the job or girl for the job, whatever the case may be, go in there, kind of guns a-blazing for lack of better terms and present your case and just be strong about it, strong-willed, and make sure you have your facts in order and go for it. Would you say that that's something that you would kind of present, or are there specific parameters you would need to have in place in order to make that happen?
No, most definitely. I mean, confidence is key. So like when it came about it, like I'm confident what I bring and I'm confident in my ability. Of course, like, I have so much more to learn, but on top of that, like I'm hungry. Like I still want to continue to eat. So like with me being 26, like that flame's still there because I know some coaches, especially like when I was at Shippensburg, I thought it was gonna like go out, but then it reignited every single time I would step in the weight room. So that's kind of reassured me to make sure that I stayed there. And like what I'm telling the guys, like I'm hungry right now. So I understand like it's gonna be the best, and that's when when I met with the coaches and the athletic director, like I'm gonna build this to become better. Like it was already great where it was. Let's make it one of the best in the nation potentially. Like I don't care what level of division, but that's just my mentality. I don't try to come off in more of a cocky way, but like I want to try to bring the best to my ability and make sure that it's the best overall strength and conditioning facility, and then staff running, make sure everyone's very technically sound. Like I take pride in that. Like that's just something I'm very prideful in. I think that's just great from my mentors that I learned from. Make sure that everyone looks good in the weight room. When it comes to how you got to look, how like certain dress codes, and especially just how they move and lift and like the pace and tempo. Like make sure that they're enjoying it in there, but then also have that personality with each and every athlete that you can have that great rapport. Like I got athletes in here pretty much almost every day, just in the office, either eating lunch or just shooting the crap with me.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. And it's funny because I feel like any head guy I've ever worked for, like those are the qualities that they possess, right? It's like, yeah, they have great rapport with the athletes. The athletes feel like they can come in and obviously chop it up and just, like they're talking to somebody else, like anyone, you know what I mean? They could just feel like they can open up to. And sometimes a lot of times it's a little bit, easier for them than opening up to their sport coaches too, which I always found interesting. And I was actually surprised about when I first got into college sports. But, a long time ago, one of the guys I was actually working with at UConn, his name's Connell. He was like, yeah, what do you want to do when you get older? Like, what does your future look like? And I was like, well, I was kind of naming like titles and like positions or whatever. And he was like, yeah, you should really think more about like the qualities that you want to obtain. And then just kind of like see, that like you would need it obviously in order to obtain those positions, but just see what comes of it. So how have you kind of navigated like specifically what qualities you think you obtained and now you're in a position to obviously, like, because I'm like, when I'm listening to you talk, I'm like, oh, I can see why they made this guy a head guy, right? Like I can see like he has these qualities, right? I don't even know like how you coach and all that kind of stuff. And I'm sure like, they've got all that stuff mapped out. But what are some of the qualities for somebody who is trying to obtain that head position at a very young age that you think they need to truly try to dive into and develop without solely focusing on like labels and titles and you know what I mean? Like the financial aspect of things.
I think it's the biggest thing is just having the connection with the coaches and the players. I'm in a very like, I hate to say it, but at my past 2 schools, I've had 3 athletes that passed away. So that relationship that I strive for is the most important thing. Like I tell all my athletes, once everyone's on campus, my phone's on loud 24/7. When I go to bed, it's always on loud. Like my phone's always there. I got phone calls at 3:00 in the morning. They just need to talk. I'm always here. So like having that just mindset of having athletes that suddenly passed away, it's always in my mind. Like I got tattoos of them. Like it means more to me, not even about them being a college athlete, but just about growing into becoming a young adult so they can contribute to society. So I think like the coach is seeing that like I actually care about them, not just them being an athlete, but them as a person. And when coaches see that, they're like, we got a guy. Like this isn't just a normal strength coach. It's not just sets and reps. Like he cares about them more in a deeper like matter. Like there's more than this just becoming an athlete, and it's just growing them as a just as a young adult.
Yeah, dang. I'm really sorry to hear that, man. That's tough. That's my condolences. Obviously, I'm sure that's really difficult to deal with. And it's kind of wild. I'm thinking about it now. And it's like, I don't know if you could teach that. You know what I mean? I'm kind of like, well, because like you're thinking like, oh, you could provide some like insight. So, well, you either have that or you don't. Like you either care or you don't. Like it's kind of hard to like take someone who's like, yeah, like this is why I got involved in the field of strength and conditioning. Is like I want to, I don't know, get into like whatever concept X's and O's you want to talk about. Maybe I want to have an impact on other people's lives. Maybe I just like college athletics. I like what's at stake and all that stuff. But it's hard to be like, I'm going to start developing the ability to care more about individuals. It's like that's either in you or it's probably not, right? You know what I mean? So that's awesome to hear that you have that ability. And that, like I said, that there's a reason why you and people like yourself are actually in those positions, right? Like they need somebody who truly cares about them on that level. And unfortunately, I feel like, I don't know, like I think it's pretty easy to get caught up in all of the other things that come with it. It's like, because, you've done a lot of work to try to study the foundational matters of what you think is going to make them better athlete. Right. But I think, and I don't want to like tell you what's going to happen as you get older, but like I am, I'm 31 now. And I definitely got to the point where I was kind of like, damn, like this stuff's important. It's really interesting. I like it a lot, no doubt. But I don't know. Sometimes it was just like, yeah, that dude being able to come into my office and have a conversation with me is probably going to get a lot more out of him than, whatever sort of like, periodization scheme that I'm dialing up for him. You know what I mean? So I'm assuming that's kind of something that you've experienced as well.
Yeah, most definitely. Like, I hate giving like the cliche recruiting speeches. So like whenever recruits come in, I just talk to them. Like, I'm not trying to pitch anything. Like I'm real with them, how I am as a person. I tell them I'm loud and obnoxious I'm from New York. Like I'm going to be with you. I'm not going to filter. But on top of that, I want to make sure that you guys are in here enjoying your time. Make sure you're saying like, especially with certain sport teams that don't like to lift, instead of saying like, we got lift today, but like, I can go, just hang out with Coach Heumann and make sure that we're getting working, because in that time that they're scheduled to lift, like we're getting working. Like we're not just joking around. Like, I'm going to make sure I crack some jokes at times, but we're working hard and I'm coaching you hard. But then just finding that happy medium to make sure that, they're getting that success and getting better, but then also making sure that they're in here enjoying it at the time.
Sure. Yeah. No, that's awesome stuff. Well, now that you have some obviously experience, right? Like in a bunch of different places, and now you being a head guy, right? Like if we were to really kind of talk about some of the things that you think, are good about the world of strength and conditioning, obviously, because you've seen some of the bad, right? So like, you've seen some of the ugly, right? So like some of the good and some of the bad, like where you think we need to go, obviously, in order to continue to establish ourselves as something that's a respectable profession.
I mean, the good is slowly building. Like we're kind of getting more talkative. Like the pay is always going to be about it. So like that's one thing that's like everyone's becoming a little bit more vocal about. But then also I don't like that. The reason why it's because what I'm seeing more and more is that there's people that graduate right out of undergrad with no internship experience, just think that they can become a strength coach.
Sure.
Like I hate using the word like you got to grind to become one, but you kind of have to, because if not, you're not gonna find your passion more.
Right.
So like coaches being more vocal, be like, hey, like the pay's got to be a little bit higher. Like I agree, but like you got to earn it.
Yeah.
Like how can you say that you make six figures, or if you want to make six figures, when you can't even write a program and you don't know how to connect with an individual?
Yeah.
So like I like that everyone's getting more vocal, but I don't like the fact that everyone's getting more vocal. So it's like a weird like toss up too, that goes back and forth.
Well, would you say that you're kind of looking for a little bit more of a balance between what's required in order to achieve these positions, while also making sure that once you do achieve these positions, your compensation is reflective of the work that you've done leading up to that? Is a little bit more of a balance you're looking for?
Yeah, most definitely. Like of course, like down the road, like I would love to say like, yo, I'm making this amount of money, but also it's like, can I say that I deserve it now? No. Like again, like what I said earlier is like, I'm still hungry. I know I'm grown as a coach. So like, I'm going to show my worth. And then it's all like, also it's like showing your worth to administration. Like, because if they believe in you and believe in strength and conditioning, then you can be happy.
Sure.
But then also it's just all about just the administration, like constantly showing face and constantly talking in my eyes. And that's also what just I got taught to do. But like, that's where I kind of go back and forth. Like I have conversations lots of times with just other colleagues of mine. Like, yeah, we got interns thinking that they should be making this when they don't even know anything. They don't even know how to run a basic dynamic warm up. So like, yeah, the field's super saturated, but I feel like it's kind of getting tailored away of newer coaches coming in, because in this age demographic, I feel not that many people want to be able to grind so many years.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. I think like, I think if you took a look at like each level of what it takes to become a strength coach, there can be ways of like, if you took it, maybe cleaned it up on like an individual level. So be like, all right, let's clean up the way we approach like internships, maybe, right? Maybe we clean up the way like GA ships are approached. Maybe we clean up the way, professional internships are approached. Maybe we clean up the way, assistant strength coaches and everything on up. You know what I mean? Maybe if there was a way where it's like, all right, you need to do an internship, but maybe you don't have to be an intern for 2.5 years, right? You know what I mean? Maybe you do 1 or 2 internships right at different places, but like, and then maybe there's some sort of minimum wage that's associated with them. I don't, you know what I mean? Whatever the case may be, where it's like, you're still earning something, right? Like you're still working towards something. You're still, feeding that fire. And then, because what I think happens, and what I think is kind of dangerous for the field, is like, you get so many people who've had to go through hell in order to get to the positions they want. So it's like they feel it's necessary to put everybody else through hell that's underneath them prior to get. And now I'm not saying that like when I talk like hell, I'm saying like put them through like unnecessary circumstances that really aren't going to like that. You know what I mean? It's like, I don't know, like, you've heard these horror stories, right? I'm sure you've heard some of them before, maybe even lived them. So it's like, I think maybe if you took it from an individual level perspective, you might be able to like, all right, hey, there's still a level of like, you need to be gritty. You need to be able to wake up and get this thing done, have the discipline to overcome all the things that you don't want to do mentally, physically, whatever it is, and make this thing happen. But we're also going to figure out a way to incentivize you where you feel compelled to want to do good work for the university, to stay at the university, to do more for, or whatever company or organization you're working for, So I'm sure there's ways to do that on an individual level,
Yeah, most definitely. But also it's like, what I realized, there's no set like goal, like there's no set map to become a head strength coach.
Right.
Like I went from BA 2 years ago to now head.
Right.
I know some people that are interning for 4 or 5 years and they can't even find a full-time spot. So it's like, yeah, you can say, hey, let's grind, but also it's like, it's about you as a person, because if you show your value, especially on the floor, to all the athletes that you're working with, to the administration, to the athletic training coaches, just everything, like that's where everything's going to pan out. So don't just think about the student athletes, think about everyone else that's in the picture. Because if you're with a football team, like you're a connection of that coaching staff. So you better make sure you got a great relationship with them. Same with any other sports team.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great point. One final question, and then we'll kind of wrap up. Hopefully we can get all this in before my Wi-Fi decides to go out again. But if you could provide some resource, like I always try to provide some resources for the listeners, right? And everybody's got different resources that they feel like they've kind of, resorted to in order to make it. And it could be people, books, podcasts, seminars, workshops, whatever, or just like a piece of advice, kind of like final closing thoughts as to what you want to provide in terms of insight and information for our listeners that you feel has really helped you in your journey, just specific to you. Doesn't have to be what, anybody else, what you think might help anyone else, just what's helped you, and maybe it'll kind of touch some others.
So for like textbooks, the system, and then also starting strength.
Yeah.
Those are probably the two books that I rely on the most.
Nice.
What I kind of just tailor my programming around. And then of course I add some other stuff. Then when it comes to people, just, make sure you have a really good like inside source, and make sure that you got really good mentors. When I got in, it was all about like, I want to chase the logo. I don't care about the logo anymore. I care about the mentorship. Like everyone says, hey, expand your coaching tree. Like if my coaching tree is small, but I'm really well connected with them and I can give them a call whenever I want, that's what I care about more.
Sure. Yeah.
And then also I kind of took this from a strength coach, Coach Hada at UT Arlington. He always says, always work like a volunteer. And that kind of just keeps me making sure that I'm not like, don't be satisfied where you're at. Like,
yeah,
just because you are full-time getting paid, GA, whatever it is, like always still have that grinding mindset. Like there's always got to be work to be done, because the athletes is what matters first.
Sure. Yeah.
Especially like when you come in. So that's probably all the things that I got to tailor to. And that's always like my mindset when it comes in. Like always work like a volunteer. When I woke up this morning, like I woke up tired, completely tired. I want to get up at 4 a.m. But right when I got up, I said, it's time to go right now. Like I'm excited for the day.
Yeah.
And so that's just always my mindset. Like, especially when I step foot in the office, I see the weight room, I see the kids walking in, I'm excited. I'm amped up. Like we had a yoga day today and I was just like, I'm happy about it. See them work on something that, hey, they don't want to do, but like understand that, hey, this is better for you.
Sure.
Okay. This is a recovery day. So let's recover and let's lock in. They were locked in and we had a great day.
Yeah. That's awesome. Well, you're an inspiration and you're a great story, man. And you're obviously super motivated, and I wish you nothing but the best. And I'm really interested to see, where your story ends up and obviously where it goes from here. Where can people find you? Instagram, social media, email, whatever you want to give out. If you want, if people want to get in contact with you, or you just want to, have a selfless plug, just rock and roll.
I mean, Instagram's probably the best thing. Coach Huey. I'm always on it the most. And then Twitter, I don't even know I'm really on it. I know the football coach wants me to get on it more, so I'm gonna slowly go onto that. So I probably got to get my handle. But then also, if you just go onto the school website, you can find me. Shoot me an email whenever you want. I'm always easy to get back. And I'm always easy to talk shop and stuff.
No doubt. Well, awesome, man. Again, dude, really appreciate you doing this, Jared. I know this is a little bit, a little funky, not necessarily the smoothest podcast, but you're awesome, man. You're a great dude. I really wish you the best. And I'm being interested to see how the football team does this fall. Actually got another team, obviously got to keep my eye on. So keep doing your thing, man. And if we can ever help out with anything, let us know. But awesome stuff. Best of luck to you.
Most definitely. I definitely appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, no doubt, man. All right. Have a good one, Jared.
Yep. You too.
All right. Bye-bye.